This is Chapter 6, Section 3. The war moves west and south. Beginning on page 168, American Diary. A brave Mohawk war chief, Joseph Brant, blended Native American and British ways. Brant, however, spoke strongly on behalf of his people. On a 1776 visit to London, he said the Mohawks have shown their zeal and loyalty to the king, yet they have been very badly treated by his people. Indeed, it is very hard when we have let the king's subjects have so much of our lands, and they should want to cheat us. From Joseph Brant, speech March 14, 1776. War in the West. Main idea. The British, along with their Native American allies, led attacks against settlers in the West. History and you. Do you have a nickname? If so, how did you get it? Read to learn the nickname of Henry Hamilton, the British commander at Detroit. The concerns of Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant and other Native Americans about their lands became entangled in the events of the American Revolution. As a result, several important battles involving Native Americans took place along the western frontier. Some Native Americans helped the Patriots, but more sided with the British. For them, the British seemed less of a threat than the Americans. The British and Native Americans. West of the Appalachian Mountains, the British and their Native American allies raided American settlements. Joseph Brant led a number of brutal attacks in southwestern New York and northern Pennsylvania. Henry Hamilton, British commander at Detroit, was called the hair buyer. He earned his nickname because he paid Native Americans for settlers' scalps. Victories at Vincennes. George Rogers Clark, a lieutenant colonel in the Virginia militia, set out to end the British attacks on western settlers. In July 1778, Clark and 175 soldiers sailed west down the Ohio River. After a march of about 120 miles, the Patriots seized the British post at Kaskaskia in present-day Illinois. They then captured the British town of Vincennes in present-day Indiana. British troops under Henry Hamilton's command recaptured Vincennes that December. Clark vowed to get it back. In February 1779, Clark and his troops led a surprise attack against the British and forced Hamilton's surrender. George Rogers Clark's victory at Vincennes strengthened the American position in the West. Reading check. Summarizing. Describe events in the Revolutionary War in the West. Glory at sea. Main idea. The American Navy and American privateers had some successes against the powerful British Navy. History and you. Besides George Washington, what other heroes of the American Revolution do you know? Read to learn about John Paul Jones, who became a naval hero during the Revolutionary War. As fighting continued on the western frontier, other battles raged at sea. Great Britain's powerful navy kept the ships of the Patriots and their allies from entering or leaving American harbors. The blockade prevented supplies and reinforcements from reaching the Continental Army. Privateers. To break the blockade, the Second Continental Congress ordered construction of 13 American warships. Only 2 of these ships, however, sailed to sea. Several were quickly captured by the British. The American Navy was too weak to operate effectively. The Congress authorized approximately 2,000 ships to sail as privateers. These were privately owned merchant ships with weapons. Finding crews for these ships was not difficult. Privateering was a profitable trade. Privateers captured more British ships at sea than the American Navy. John Paul Jones. A daring American naval officer, John Paul Jones, raided British forts. Near the coast of Great Britain in September of 1779, Jones's ship, Bonhomme Richard, met the British warship Serapis, escorting a fleet of merchant ships. The Bonhomme Richard and the Serapis fought for hours. The British captain asked whether Jones wished to surrender. Jones is said to have answered, "I have not yet begun to fight." In the end, the Serapis surrendered, but the Bonhomme Richard sank not long after the battle. Still, his victory made John Paul Jones a naval hero to the American Patriots. Reading check. Describing. How did privateers contribute to the American war effort? Struggles in the South. Main idea. Great Britain hoped that a strong campaign in the South would help the war. History in You. Has a strategy ever helped your team score a victory or help you to do better on a test? Read to find out about American and British strategies in the South. In the early war years, or in the early wars, in the war's early years, the Americans won several battles in the South. In 1776, they crushed Loyalists at the Battle of Moores Creek near Wilmington, North Carolina. They also saved Charlestown, South Carolina, from the British. Although a small battle, its impact or effect was great. By 1778, the British realized that bringing the American colonies back into the empire would not be easy. As a result, they changed their strategy and planned a hard-hitting offensive to finish the war. The British concentrated their efforts in the South, where there were many Loyalists. They hoped to use British sea power and the support of the Loyalists to win decisive victories in the southern states. Initially, the strategy worked. British victories. In late 1778, General Henry Clinton sent 3,500 British troops from New York to take Savannah, Georgia. The British occupied the coastal city and overran most of the state. In early 1780, Clinton himself headed south with a large army to attack the port of Charlestown, South Carolina. Charlestown surrendered in May, and the British took thousands of prisoners. It marked the worst American defeat of the war. Clinton returned to New York, leaving General Charles Cornwallis in command of British forces in the South. The Continental Congress sent forces under General Horatio Gates to face Cornwallis. The two armies met at Camden, South Carolina in August 1780. Although the British won, Cornwallis soon found that he could not control the area he had conquered. He and his troops faced a new kind of warfare. Guerrilla warfare. The British received less help than they had expected from Loyalists in southern states. Instead, as British troops moved through the countryside, small forces of patriots attacked them. These bands of soldiers appeared suddenly, struck their blows, and then disappeared. This hit-and-run technique of guerrilla warfare caught the British off guard. One successful guerrilla leader, Francis Marion, operated out of the swamps of eastern South Carolina. Known as the Swamp Fox, Marion is quick and smart. One British colonel grumbled that the devil himself could not catch Marion. Help from Spain. When Bernardo de Galvez became governor of Louisiana, Spain was neutral. That did not stop Galvez from helping the colonists. He loaned thousands of dollars to the Americans and opened the port of New Orleans to free trade. Galvez also had tons of supplies and ammunition shipped up the Mississippi River to American troops in the Northwest Territory. With this help, George Rogers Clark captured the key posts of Kaskaskia, Cahokia, and Vincennes. In the summer of 1779, Spain declared war on Britain. Galvez raised an army of Spanish soldiers along with Creoles, Native Americans, and African Americans, and marched on British posts along the lower Mississippi. He captured Baton Rouge, Natchez, Mobile, and Pensacola. Galvez's victories opened supply lines for military goods from Spain, France, Cuba, and Mexico. According to historian Buchanan Parker Thompson, Galvez had given, primary source, the most vital aid contributed by any one man to the struggling American colonies. In winning this triumphant victory over the last great British outpost, he had not only served his king to the limit of his strength, but had made to the United States the most important gift an ally could offer, the security of their southeastern and western frontiers. From Spain, forgotten ally of the American Revolution. Patriot victories. After their victory at Camden, South Carolina, the British moved northward through the Carolinas in September 1780. At Kings Mountain, a British officer and more than 1,000 Loyalists defended an outpost against Patriot attack. The Patriots forced the British to retreat. The victory brought new support for independence from Southerners. They wanted to see an end to the war that was destroying their homes and farms. In October 1780, Nathaniel Greene replaced Gates as commander of the Continental forces in the South. Rather than lead an all-out attack on Cornwallis's forces, Greene split his army in two. In January 1781, one section of the army, led by General Daniel Morgan, defeated the British at Cowpen, South Carolina. Another section joined Marion's guerrilla raids. Greene reunited his forces in March to meet Cornwallis's army at Guilford Courthouse in present-day Greensboro, North Carolina. Greene's army was forced to retreat, but the British sustained or suffered great losses in the process. General Cornwallis abandoned the Carolina campaign. British retreat. Cornwallis realized that the British had to act quickly to win the war. More French troops were on their way to America, and the Patriots still held Virginia. Troops and supplies were still moving south. In April 1781, Cornwallis marched north to Virginia. His troops carried out raids throughout the state. They nearly captured Governor Thomas Jefferson and the Virginia legislature in June. Jefferson fled on horseback just ahead of the advancing British troops. General Washington sent Lafayette and General Anthony Wayne south to fight Cornwallis. Meanwhile, Cornwallis set up camp at Yorktown, which was located on the Virginia coast. There he awaited further orders from Clinton in New York. The battle for the South was entering its final phase. Reading check. Evaluating. What effect did the Patriot victory at Kings Mountain produce? Section 3, Review. 1. Define the following: blockade, privateer, impact, guerrilla warfare, sustain. Main ideas. 2. Stating what side did more Native Americans take in the war for independence and why? 3. Discussing why did the Americans need to break the British naval blockade? 4. Explaining how did Spain help to undermine Great Britain's southern strategy? And finally, the essential question: how did fighting in the West and South affect the course of the Revolutionary War? That concludes Chapter 6, Section 3.